Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to the show. Very interesting that we just popped right in there. But glad to see you, Matt. This is Matt Weinglass, everybody. He is going to be my co-host today. Pasta is off today. We're giving him a day off, and Matt is here. Jayme, if you can just lower the music a tad, because I'm not quite as loud as Pasta. So I need all the help I can get. Matt, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Fee, for having me today. I'm glad to fill in for Pasta. A well-deserved break. You got to have that sometimes. We took a little week off on our show, The Homeless Left, so we're excited to come back this week as well. So yeah, we help each other out here.
And you had a good birthday, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. And, being in LA here, just having a chance to take a week off and get out of LA, that's something we were able to do. Leslie and I were able to take a little trip down to Mexico and enjoy for a few days. And now we're back into the action, back to the grind here in LA, which is not so fun. It hasn't been fun here, in the recent years, as a lot of people know, that watch our shows, they know it's not the greatest place to hang out on your birthday. So.
No, and the LA grind. Oh goodness. I don't miss that LA grind. I do miss the LA sun. So, we'll get right to it though, Matt, because we have some really interesting things to cover. And I really would like to start off by covering what's been happening with Russia, Ukraine, what's going on with that meeting. So if you're ready, let's get to it.
Let's go.
All right. So, as you all know, there have been these talks since before Donald Trump came into office, right? He ran on this ending the Russia-Ukraine war. And we've been talking about it at every stage because I think you've seen this, Matt. At every given moment, we have Rubio say something, Trump say something, and then they contradict themselves like a day later, and then the Kremlin says something, and it's just this back and forth. So what I've been advocating is for people to really look at the actions taken, what's happening behind the scenes. Stephen Witkoff has been coming here quite often. So while there have been reports that the US isn't ever going to come up with a deal, they're not serious, I actually believe they are serious about a deal right now, because this is in their best interest, because Donald Trump has to position himself as the person who's going to come in, achieve a victory of peace, the peacemaker, the anti-war president, as he is being framed by many of his supporters who, in my opinion, are delusional or seeing something else. But he is going to come in and try to resolve this entire thing, because that's what he ran on. He needs to deliver. And also because they've lost. The United States has lost. NATO has lost. The EU is completely in disheveled, essentially. And so now he's coming in and trying to push this deal through. However, it's obviously been difficult with the EU and the UK, who are really on the losing side of this, really not wanting to let go, with Zelensky in many ways portraying himself as not having to let go, as having more power than we all know he actually has. And in reality, we know the US has manipulated this from the start, right? Since 2014 and even before that. So let's bring up this Trump and Zelensky meeting that really happened during the Pope's funeral. So this was something that a lot of people kind of were expecting to occur. And this is the first time they've seen each other since that moment where they had that disagreement and everybody was talking about it endlessly. And they met at the Vatican, and this was pushed in media like it was a historic meeting, and they're deciding if this peace deal was going to come through. And according to Donald Trump, of course, it was a very beautiful meeting, the nicest office. I mean, the way this guy speaks is just like, it's impossible not to laugh. A beautiful, beautiful scene. And he said the meeting did go well, and that they had a dispute because earlier he said, I disagreed with something he said, and the cameras were rolling. And Mike Waltz said this meeting was iconic. It's going to go down in history books. This is what he told Fox News Sunday morning. And they're calling him President Trump. They're calling him the president of peace, talking about diplomacy in the Vatican. We're setting up this whole scenario. And Zelensky said the meeting was very symbolic and has the potential to be historic if they achieve some sort of results. And Macron was there, as well as the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And obviously they have to advocate for Europe and for the UK as well. So Trump afterwards did say that he thought Zelensky understood that he had to give up Crimea, that Crimea was a done deal. He also remarked how that Vladimir Putin, and people are saying, oh, this is the first time he has turned on Putin. Not really. He has said dumb things about Putin, that if he had been president and not, Obama, things wouldn't have turned out this way. He said it multiple times before, but on Sunday, he said that he was disappointed that Putin's forces were attacking civilians, specifically in Ukraine. And he said, I want him to stop shooting, sit down, and sign a deal. So, in my opinion, Trump is playing both sides. He's trying to appear a diplomat to Vladimir Putin and serious, but he's got to give some sort of something to Zelensky and the major NATO players, because obviously they're going to be on him if not. And so I think he's just portraying this whole scenario in this way. But in reality, let's face it, there is no other way. And he even said it himself a few days ago. What is Russia doing? What is Putin doing to show some sort of peace agreement? And he said, well, he's not going to take the whole country. And that's a pretty big deal, understanding that obviously Russia has all the cards here. So I just wanted to ask your take on this meeting and what you think actually was the purpose of this, because it's clearly being pushed in the media as something to behold.
Yeah, no, this is damage control, I believe. We saw the polling. Trump's support has been just going down and down and down, mostly because of this idea that he was packaged as the peace president. And if you reading this article, you see that they're still championing that message, and that's through this sit down. So I'm looking at this fee, and I'm seeing a theater piece. Even just that picture you pulled up there, they're sitting there. This is totally staged. This is like, let's put you guys together. Trump's the perfect vessel for this negotiation. You said that he's playing both sides. He's very good at this. He kind of goes back and forth in between, and he creates this narrative that he's the guy that's solving this problem, when he's just as big of a puppet as Zelensky is. And this is the time to do this right now, because it takes the anger of everyone else that was saying, wait a minute, you're not the peace president. Look at everything you're doing in the Middle East. Look at everything you're bowing down to Netanyahu. So you have to basically create this scenario to keep that message alive. And all the people that voted for Trump, all the people that are still hopeful that, well, yeah, he screwed everything else up, but this is the one thing we voted him for. This is the thing. So they're all like, yes, this is happening. But again, it's just theater. And we knew this was going to be inevitable anyways. Before the election, we knew this is the ultimate outcome of Ukraine. It's just a matter of how are they going to package it. And this is how they're packaging it. And we're watching it go down in real time.
Exactly. And I'm glad you really emphasized the theater aspect, because Trump is, as Pastor always says, a WWE guy. He's like the guy that they go to for this theatrical display. And Zelensky's an actor as well. So you have all this whole Hollywood theatrics being put on in front, and using, this is where I think a lot of people aren't even understanding. They're using the dead Pope, the Pope's funeral, and a religious, right, a sanctimonious religious place like the Vatican to drive this sort of PR manipulation that they're doing in order to appear as Trump being the peace guy, Zelensky coming out and acting like he has any sort of say in this whole matter, when we know who's Trump's dealing with. He's dealing with Russia, and Russia's dealing with the US. That tells you who this is really about. And so they're trying to manipulate this as, okay, this is going to be a good thing done by the West, by the United States, by Donald Trump. And look, poor Zelensky, look how he's being so flexible. Bad Putin, look at Putin, he's still bombing people. But what they're not telling you is that Ukraine has endlessly been actually shelling civilian areas.
Mhm.
And so that's why Russia was responding. And so you have this back and forth. And what they're also not telling you is that Russia just recuperated the area of Kursk that they had backed out of. And we had said this all along, like a year ago, like a long time ago, that they would, because they left voluntarily. It was, yes, they lost it, but it was because they didn't want to put forces there at the moment, and they weren't going to come back and take it. And they took Kursk today, like as of 48 hours ago or so. And it was already a done deal before that. But I mean, the last holdouts in Kursk are gone. And so what does the media do? They talk about this, but they're not talking about the fact that Ukraine really has completely lost, and not only lost the territory that they had really put a lot of their PR and effort by saying, look how we're beating Russia. We took Kursk. They've also lost people, countless troops. And this was a huge holdout, because now what Russia has to do is continue moving towards the outer regions, which is Kiev. And they have, like, this would be the continuing path in making these strives towards that way. And so now Russia's like, all right, well, we're ready for the deal now. And now it's almost like there's nowhere for Ukraine to go. That's the reality. Like, they're saying, all right, this is it. We'll stop now. Putin has also issued an order of a ceasefire that will go into place on May 8th for the duration of the May 9th festivities. And it's going to last several days. And they put this out. They said, well, we'll stop. We'll have a ceasefire. We're not going to engage in anything. This is going to be a display of diplomacy because of celebrating the May 9th festivities. And so now Ukraine's responding, saying, oh, well, whatever. Like, they're not taking it as a serious thing. So this is, again, as you said, a lot to display here. Okay, so I want to ask your opinion on this tweet that I have, Matt. I wrote this sort of long tweet before we get into some of this other stuff, because I thought a lot of people are getting this from a different perspective. They're looking at it as, either the US isn't serious and isn't really going to push for this, or Russia doesn't really want a ceasefire. Russia actually does want an end to the Ukraine war. They don't want a temporary one. They want a permanent one, right? Now, the United States, as we said, and Donald Trump want to show that they're getting out of this scot-free, that they have the upper hand, but we've all seen the developments in the reality, right? Now, this doesn't mean that I'm saying that Russia should trust the United States. I'm not saying that the United States is going to simply end this and move on. We all know that when it comes to Donald Trump, he's the president of continuity in terms of this administration, continuing what was done under the Biden administration, which continued the former Trump era, and then which continued the Obama era, where all of this began. And so when we look at that, we know that they're going to return to this eventually, because they're building up support against Russia with Poland, with Germany, with the Balkan area. We've seen the recent election debacles in Moldova, and in this area where they're using former Soviet republics and Soviet nations that were part of it against Russia. They've been trying to turn Georgia as well. And so what you're seeing is, yeah, this isn't going to come into play in this administration because they can't, because they're trying to wage war with Iran in one way or another, whether it's through regime change or militarily. They're trying to, right now, they're still attacking Yemen. They're trying to go after China, and they're also obviously helping expand Greater Israel via the destruction of Gaza. And so they're a little bit preoccupied at the moment to really focus on this. So this has got to finish for now. But I do think that the US will come back to it. And I think that there's a lack of understanding in a lot of these countries still to this day of the United States government and how it works, and how Trump isn't really much different than Joe
Right.
Biden. And how they're manipulating this to to not look so bad, because we all know it's a loss. And so essentially, I think a lot of these countries, the people of these countries, need to be careful when making these deals with the United States, and understand, like, this isn't necessarily mean that they're done. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear with that, with how the US is approaching this. Are they serious? Well, they're serious now, but
Right.
who knows down the line.
Well, I think you make a great point, Fee, about the rest of the people in other countries. They need to pay a little closer attention to our track record. And
Yeah.
we're learning too. We didn't fully understand. And I'm gonna use Ukraine as an example, when you and I and everybody knew this was only going to end poorly. And we always were asking this question: well, why would we double down on this? Why would Biden-Harris administration double down, keep tripling down? Zelensky tripling down on this scenario that can only end in one way. And it's going to destroy this credibility of NATO and of the West, because there's no way out of it. And then we had this kind of aha moment when it came to Syria. And we were like, there it is. There it is. When we, quote unquote, failed at the takeover of Syria and getting Assad out years ago, we circled back. We played the long game. We drew Putin's attention out from Syria, put it on Ukraine, and then we did a second try at it, and now we accomplished that goal. But it was the long game that we were playing, and then it made sense. We go, oh, there you go. There's the Ukraine. There was the purpose there, and we got that done. We got that. The 7 countries in 5 years scenario is still on the board, still on the table. Now we're seeing, okay, where will the focus be next? We're looking at Iran. We're looking at these other places that we have to draw our attention to next. And then, like you said, we come back to it like 20 moves down. I loved your tweet, because it's like, when you look at the long game, there's no way we can celebrate a win at this point. Even if everything goes smoothly and Trump packages this thing perfectly, we have this long game in place. And I urge other people in other countries to look at our track record. Like, we have to look at it ourselves and say, there's something else going on here. And the game of chess, it's a long game. And we're certainly playing it here beyond multiple administrations into the future.
Yeah. And it's really crazy, because I'm speaking from being here and knowing how people are more positive towards the Trump administration. At least people who are politically inclined, who work in news, or who are, politicos here. They're a lot more pro-Trump, because they're like, well, look at what happened under Biden. But this has been an ongoing thing for multiple administrations. This was planned out long ago. The fact that they would never allow Russia into NATO when Putin actually wanted to become a part of NATO. The fact that their entire goal is to balkanize Russia. And that's the thing, that is their entire goal. There's a lot of untapped natural resources, because this is really, they can talk about communism all day long, but Russia isn't a communist country anymore. It's completely a capitalist economy. And it's growing, and it's making connections with powerful players in the game that have changed the global dynamic of the geopolitical stage. So, like, what we're seeing here is the US sort of try to maintain this facade of a power hold, but they're not going to just fall without doing everything they can to avoid it, and clawing onto power. So that's, I think, what we're seeing here, that a lot of people are missing. Now, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, went to a meeting. It was a meeting in Rio, in Brazil, and it was a BRICS meeting between all of the foreign ministers of BRICS. And he was interviewed by a Brazilian outlet, and he gave an interview where he said that the ball is not in Russia's court. And he said that the Americans seem to understand better now what Russia's position and desires are within this entire situation. And he outlined a few things, including the removal of Ukraine's ban on negotiations with Russia. So obviously, in order to negotiate a ceasefire or an actual end to this war, Russia has to be at the table. Otherwise, how are you going to negotiate,
Right.
which is common sense. They want a full formal rejection of Ukraine's entry into NATO. That was supposed to be a given
Sure.
from way before. And they also want recognition of Russia's incorporated territories. We're talking about the Donetsk, Lugansk, and Zaporozhye, as well as I think there's a one more. But other than that, everything that they've gained since they would like. However, I'm sure they'll be able to negotiate something because they've said that they're willing to negotiate something. They're willing to give something, right?
Mhm.
There's also going to be measures to eliminate any anti-Russian activities by neo-Nazis. So, for example, in these parts of Ukraine, if you spoke Russian, if you had Russian literature, if you had anything to do with anything regarding Russia, you were attacked in one way or another. So they want to remove all of that. And that's, I think, going to be easier said than done. And the security assurances, which is I think the main thing for Russia, other than NATO, is, obviously they don't want to be threatened by this again. The problem is that the United States will probably say, okay, we'll give you this, this, and that. And there still needs to be an eye on them because they're going to come back to this, as we said. So these are some of the things that he laid out. So obviously he's saying, look, the ball is in their court now. But when we hear Trump talk, he's saying Putin needs to accept this deal. So it's kind of like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah. Are they trying to draw this out even longer? I mean, like we talk about this Mark Rubio situation where it's like every time you're saying the opposite of the other thing and you're just drawing this out, it still feels like we're kind of in this kind of stalemate situation here with who's serving next. Wait, no, you're serving. No, it's my serve. No, ball's in your court. So we're just going to kind of sit and draw this out. Like a great reality TV show does. It draws it out. You got to go wait to the next episode. Wait to the next week. We'll tell you the winner next time, and we don't ever get to the goal.
We don't, but I looking at it from the perspective of what the Russian government wants, and I think even the Russian people, as they're just done with this war. I mean, it's no matter what people say, it's still a war. It's still causing destruction to people who are going to fight in it. Actually, I think it was the son of a CIA. I forget who she is. She works for the CIA. She's obviously of Russian descent, but her son went to fight for Russia, and he was just killed. So you have like Russians being killed too. You have the sanctions that were also Rubio is saying aren't going to be, pushed again. There were already other sanctions that go until the end of this year or into the next year. So he's saying, yeah, we won't add more, but there's already some of them.
Sure.
And they play a role. Obviously, Russia is still pushing, supporting their own domestic creations, their own building up their own economy, which they didn't really do before that. So this in a way has been good for them. The ruble's doing well. But all in all, like there's still effects from on the economy from the war. It's not like it doesn't exist. And I think there's also the tediousness of not being able for Russians not being able to go places, of just Russia looking to expand its interests economically. They talked about oil with the United States. They talked about building some sort of economic opportunity with the United States. And so that's what they're looking at. Russia has never been anti-West. And this is the common misconception that Russia is anti-West. They haven't been anti-West. The US has been anti-Russia. The West has been anti-Russia, but Russia hasn't been anti-West. They actually have a more positive view of the United States. And I say this every time, than I or most Americans do about the United States. So there is that element to it as well. And just one thing, Matt, that nobody's talked about really at length, I think, is the fact that um, the DPRK, North Korea, did help defeat Ukraine in Kursk. And remember when they weren't admitting this, when Russia was not really admitting whether they did or didn't have troops from North Korea in Ukraine. And suddenly, we see that they did admit that. And they had this video of that. So Jayme, you can play the video and I'll talk through it, and then we'll get Matt's take on this. I just want to say, if you guys recall a few months ago, I basically, if you can lower the volume, I basically laid out a comparison between the treaty with Iran that was most recent and the treaty with North Korea. And the treaty with North Korea always had military backing, meaning that if something happens, if there's an attack on North Korea, Russia will aid them militarily. They will respond. Whereas with Iran, the alliance is just formal. It's like, yeah, we have an alliance, but if somebody like, say, the US or Israel attack Iran, we're going to go refer to the UN diplomatic charter. That's their go-to. And so it's very different. And I wanted to ask you, Matt, why do you think Russia has this treaty with North Korea and not with Iran? And why do you think they admitted to this now?
That is a great question. I mean, we've always seen this very interesting relationship Russia keeps with Iran that I would never expect in a million years that they would go that distance. The fact that he's admitting to it with North Korea, I think he's sending a message, certainly, to NATO. He's sending a message that we got each other's backs here. We're not, look, he held out for a little bit, flat out admitted it, and he's all in. And we have to recognize that with North Korea, we now we are going up against a larger enemy, as we claim it to be, with that kind of backing. But no, there's no way that Putin would go all in with Iran in the same way. But this sends certainly a clear message to NATO and to the West, what we're dealing with. When we're the ones who keep breaking all of the treaties, right? We're the ones who keep breaking our word. We're the ones who keep saying, "Oh yeah, Ukraine's going to stay neutral. Psych, we're going to push him into NATO." So this is the kind of backing Putin has to demonstrate that he's showing, and it's definitely a clear message he's sending to the West.
Yeah, and as Jayme just posted this tweet, right? It's also kind of like, you all have a bunch of NATO troops in Ukraine. So now you're going to make a big deal because there's already been something said about this, about, North Korea. How dare they, how dare they have North Koreans there? Well, you're all doing it. So why can't we? It's kind of showing that. But, additionally, we have to look at who North Korea is. And North Korea has a huge military power. They are a nuclear country. They have the ability to really make strides in any sort of war. And they are a welcome alliance to Russia. I don't believe it's an ideological, because as I said, Russia right now is not an ideological government. They're operating based on certain interests and expanding certain interests. And when you look at North Korea, the military power that they have and how far away they are from all of the other BS that's going on in the world kind of makes them a really natural ally. Of course, this has existed before, but the reason I think Russia's maintained this is because of their abilities, their might, and their power. And North Korea sees that in Russia as well. And North Korea, I would say, is one of the most in many ways isolated, closest countries to actually having communism, with the keeping the US Western propaganda away. And so they're very much their own thing, to the point where, it's hard for Americans to go there and figure out what's actually happening. But what we're seeing here is this alliance where now the United States is put in a really, really difficult position because there's this whole attempt to end the war going on. And the Russians are like, oh, yeah, by the way, North Korea is aiding us. And the United States and North Korea do not get along. And it's ideological, yes, but it's also the fact that North Korea is a powerful adversary from their perspective. And so now you have Russia aligning with North Korea, and North Korea doesn't have the problem Iran has. Iran has the problem of going after Israel. And so when you put Israel in the mix, as I've said before, Russia believes that Israel should exist. Russia believes in the two-state solution. There's millions of Russians living in Tel Aviv. There's, Jewish Russians in Russia. There's all of these cultural and political things that have tied Russia to Israel. And even now you're seeing that develop in terms of Syria. And so it's kind of like the perfect ally, whereas with Iran, you don't have that. And so I think this also points to really exposing why Russia did pushed itself away from Syria, why Russia did from Bashar al-Assad Syria, why Russia is doing what it's doing, and really just kind of lays it out there. And the treaty, the difference in the treaties really shows everything. So this is not necessarily a good thing for the U.S. It's puts them in a position to have to accept that, maybe in a position to try to move Russia away from North Korea, and do something like that in one way or another, I would say. So yeah.
I think I'm off the screen here. Hold on. Let me make a little adjustment here. Give me a second.
Oh yeah, no worries. No worries. So this is, again, we have to look at what's actually happening versus what we really want to happen. Ideally, what everybody's saying is, oh yeah, Russia supports North Korea because the Soviet Union and yada yada yada, but really the Soviet Union is no more. You still have some of the bureaucratic influence, you have some of the other things in Russia, but this current government is like, all right, North Korea has weapons, they have a military, they're not involved in all this bullshit right here, we're gonna go and make an alliance with them. This has been a long-standing alliance, but they don't really have a reason to maintain it unless they see the potential for a strong, equal partnership. It's just increased and developed. And from North Korea's side, you continue to have this. All right, well, the Russians are doing their thing, and we're going to help them out, but they're going to help us out too. So this kind of could be something that could save Russia from any sort of attack. It's almost like a protection now to have North Korea militarily on your side, because you have China and now China and Russia have always been diplomatic, but North Korea, Kim Jong-un doesn't play. And so I think if there's anybody out there that's like a wild card, it's been North Korea, and a lot of people haven't been paying attention to them. Mm-hmm. So this is really an interesting development.
Absolutely. I wonder, and I'm going to maybe just kind of throw a, what would, because we asked this question a lot about what would be the difference strategically and, just geopolitically speaking, our relationship in this war right now, if in some hypothetical, we had President Kamala doing all this, like what would be the difference? And this is what people ask about when we talk about like why people voted for Trump. And this was a big reason. Mm-hmm. Does this change the dynamics? Does this change the chessboard, whether or not Putin comes out and says, we have North Korea on the ground? We have a different relationship with Trump and North Korea and the history there, and understanding how that system works on the chessboard versus someone like Kamala. Would we be in a worse shape right now? It's possible we would be slightly, even though we say it doesn't really matter the face of the thing of the operation, but it could be like, I think you could make that case. It'd be slightly different on the chessboard right now. So this is a good thing that Putin can say this out loud and put us in a position where the message is being heard loud and clear. And I think Trump hears that message. And we have to act appropriately in this scenario.
Yeah. And notice how they're not talking too much about it, because it's kind of Like, oh,
Yep.
okay.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of, but yeah, I mean, these are the latest developments right now that are coming from Moscow. There's obviously going to be preparations for the May 9th celebration. That is going to be huge because it's the 80th celebrations, which means like basically there's really not that many people left alive. It's been 80 years since the Great Patriotic War, but I haven't seen it be this big. This is like a bigger one because of that. And so there obviously are going to be intense security measures, but there's also going to be a lot of people coming here to really see that, to really witness what's happening. And if there is a potential for peace during that time, I think Russia will take it
Mm.
because it will signal even the meeting between the most recent meeting, the most recent talks happened on a very significant day during the end of World War II, around that time. So it's been quite interesting watching the developments. And again, like I think what you're seeing is just the end of Ukraine. Either
Mhm.
Ukraine gives in now and takes what they have, or they're going to lose it all. And I think that's essentially what Russia is saying. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I hate to say I told you so, but we told him so. This is we could have avoided this whole
Yeah.
thing and all these thousands and thousands of unnecessary dead Ukrainians in the process. It's really sad because we did tell him so, and here we are. You could have had this whole thing worked out before 2022. You could have this whole thing solved, but okay, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on in a way, but also, there's a lot going on around the Pope, right? And the Pope died, and the Pope was viewed very favorably by most of the world. He was one of those rare times when he's actually mostly liked by the majority of people. Even if he didn't really do enough for certain issues, he was still viewed favorably by people who don't like each other, right? And so you had Iran attend his funeral, you had Trump attend his funeral, you had just a lot of people from all over the world.
Mhm.
And it was Melania's birthday. She was celebrating, I think it was her 55th birthday, and so on. And she attended the funeral and blah blah blah. And you had all the who's attending this funeral, and you didn't have Israel at the funeral though, right? So
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit more about this whole scenario around the Pope's death?
Yeah, so there's been a coordinated effort from the mainstream media to not report accurately on the Pope, the death of the Pope, and now the funeral of the Pope, and what's coming next. And we got to look at that alignment. And we've seen this before, Fee. We've seen the mainstream align on their talking points. Right now, their big talking point is, "Oh, Trump showed up in a blue suit, and no one else did." No, that's a lie. There were blue suits everywhere. That's not the story. They always try to figure out what the story is going to be to get people upset. The thing they're not going to tell us about is that Israel did not show up to the funeral. We found that out from let me see. We found out this morning because we didn't know either until it was reported. And the reason that they weren't there is because this is a big fu to the Pope for getting the Palestinians back the entire time since October 7th. He has had their back. A lot of people don't know this, but Pope Francis was on the phone with the Palestinians, with the the Christians there, the Catholics that were stationed there, on the phone with them every single day, as much as he could since October 7th, checking in, talking to them. This is something that we should have all known about, but nobody does. They don't. They go, really? Every day? Yeah, every day. And he talked about it. His last speech on Christmas. I want to get into that in a little bit, but this Pope, that part was silent. So of course, when they're reporting on the funeral itself, they're not going to tell us that part. If they told us that, people will go, well, why? Why do you think Israel didn't show up? What do you think? What do you think their problem is? The Pope is saying language. Now, let's be clear about the language. The Pope is saying up until his death, the language is that this is not a war. These are acts of terror. He calls the acts of Israel and the IDF on Gaza terrorism. He's saying that out of his own mouth. He said it several times. And so the mainstream media has to ignore this up through his death. And as we know now, they're not going to tell us how Israel's responding. And they're not showing up to send a message back saying, you don't have our back, we don't have yours. And that's where we are right now.
Am I correct to state that Israel removed some of the pictures they had of the Pope, or some of the they had something positive about the Pope before, but they removed that from their media pages because after, as you said, the criticism that he had, I think it was a condolence that was deleted. So let me see if I can. Yeah, so they had a deleted condolence after the Pope died. And so they they had announced via the Israeli Foreign Ministry that, I hope he rests in peace, blah blah blah, and then they deleted it, probably because they weren't all in agreement with how positively they should talk about the Pope. So yeah, that just tells you everything about Israel's. But it's kind of ironic too when you talk about the Catholic Pope and Catholic religion and Christianity, and you go way back to the Bible as to who crucified Christ and all of this. It's kind of crazy how all of this came together. And this was shortly at Easter, right? So a lot of things were happening at that moment. So yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know about him calling them every day. That was never advertised in any way, shape, or form whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, we should look at just so people can see that this has been documented. This isn't just being said after the fact as some sort of let's package this thing and tell people after. No, this has been the whole way for over a year and a half. I think we put one of the clips of that. I want people to see that. Jayme, do you have the there was a Daily Call link so we can see one of the calls he had with the Palestinian Christian community. Yeah, let's just look at it. This was a standard thing he did every day. Just let's watch one of these.
Buonasera Santo Padre.
Buonasera, come stai?
Sto bene, grazie a Dio. Mi scusa, è stato con la Santa Messa.
Ah, con la messa. E dimmi,
Sì.
cosa avete mangiato oggi?
Il pollo, le ali, el resto de polli, el resto del pollo, la salita che sta Santo Padre. Lo che quedò del pollo de ayer. Quasi tutti il compound qua ha mangiato pollo. Casi
Pollo.
todos los refugiados acá comieron pollo ayer.
Ieri hanno mangiato pollo.
Anche il doctor Atallah. E también el doctor.
come va?
كلت فراخ يا دكتور؟ كلت جاهز فراخ النهارده. الحمد لله.
Salam alaikum.
حبيبنا se nos amato papa appreciate your tender acá venía a saludar a algunos bandidos. Este es Carlito. Vos. Ahí va, vos el papa. Ahí va. Este es Baba. Hay que cumpleaños de Karima.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Ok, muchas gracias Santo Padre. Muchas gracias Santo Padre.
Grazie tante.
Vuoi ringraziare, pregare per lei, chiedere sempre prega per loro.
Prega a favore, non contro.
Sì, grazie Santo Padre.
A domani.
Grazie. A domani Santo Padre.
A domani. Shukran. Shukran.
So this is the part of the story. Again, the mainstream doesn't want you to know on purpose. This isn't because we weren't paying attention. It's because they deliberately did not want us to see this relationship that the Pope took with the Palestinian people. And then the stuff he's saying publicly, we also weren't able to really hear. And you were not going to get any of this coverage in the New York Times or any of these places. So when he does pass away, they don't mention that either in the obituaries. They don't mention it. But Israel, you can guarantee they've been furious about this. And they've tried every way to maneuver this. We saw Rabbi Shmuley, and we're going to get to that in a second, because this guy is maneuvering now. He was maneuvering at the end of the Pope's death. He's trying to maneuver now with who's going to be the next Pope. But Shmuley tried one last ditch effort to get on a plane, fly out to see the Pope on his deathbed and urge him. And he's like doing some Instagram thing on the plane saying, I'm going to go get the Pope on his last words to say Israel is the chosen people of God. Like, that's literally what he's saying. I'm going to get him to do that. No, you're not. There was no way you were going to get him to do that. That's not the thing that he's doing. That's not going to happen. So obviously that didn't happen. And now we're at the aftermath of this, is that who's going to be the next Pope. And that's what Israel's maneuver is now, is trying to maneuver who will be the next selected Pope. And that's coming up on May 7th. And Rabbi Shmuley wants this guy, Parolin. Parolin is the guy he's championing. And we have to look at this guy next and say, what is his relationship with Israel, and then the messaging is going to be that this is the perfect choice, and we're probably going to see this guy chosen. That's my guess right now. Shmuley is handpicking this guy. Yeah, let's look at this one. This is the handpicked right from Shmuley himself. Parolin is going to be the new Pope. That's my prediction, Fee. And when you're in the way we can tell he might be championed by the mainstream, by the global narrative, is they're going to start packaging this guy as a moderate. That you're going to see that next. And that's how you're going to get public consent for this guy. He is not a moderate. He's 100% Zionist, 100% Israel first, aligns with that message of greater Israel. And we're going to be right back to that. So anything that the Pope Francis was able to do for the people, for the Palestinian people, is going to be wiped off the planet. That's the point. And that's why you're not seeing a paper trail of any of this right now. You're not seeing any of it. And again, I want to say the language the Pope was using publicly, that's the most important part. Because when he says this is not a war, this is terror being committed by the IDF against the people in Gaza who are not terrorists. They are people. This is the language that will be wiped away from the record. And yet we see people around the world being imprisoned, being punished, being deplatformed, being arrested for saying the same language that the Pope has been saying for the last year and a half. That's the tragedy of this story, Fee. And we need to do our best to communicate this message that the Pope wanted the world to know, because the mainstream and Israel and all of the captured agencies are going to make sure that people don't know that this happened.
Well, and as I grew up Catholic, and I know for a fact that the Catholic Church is extremely corrupt. So I'm sure he faced great adversary against what he was saying. Against, I'm sure that many tried to tell him, "Hey, you need to back off from what you're saying," because even though the Catholic Church is Catholic and Christian, there is a lot of push between Christian Zionism and the Israeli Zionism that we've seen. There's a lot of push to join those two together as if they're one and the same, when really, if you actually look at the Bible, it would advocate against killing every single one of these kids, because children are the children of God. All children born are the children of God. But we're literally killing the United States and Israel are killing babies. They're killing, children by the hundreds of thousands now at this point. And so it's crazy. But I do think that we are seeing, we're going to see some pushback, some infiltration, some push to have a pro-Israeli Pope, which is really sad. And in a way, if you want to go the spiritual way, it's really just demonic in so many ways, because you can't really describe. There's a reason why I call him Satan, not Satan Yahoo, and why I call them Israel, because what they're doing is bringing hell on earth, unleashing this hell on earth on all these people. And the fact that you had anybody within the Catholic Church even say something, to me, was actually astounding. Because again, it hasn't always been like this. There hasn't been somebody that was outspoken like that for a while. And so unfortunately, it does look like we're going to go back to before, which is really, really sad.
Yeah. And let's take a moment to recognize how rare it is. Like you're alluding to, Fee, you're seeing the fact that the Pope was in a position and put himself, like willingly put himself in a position, and he wasn't stupid. He knew there would be consequences for making these phone calls every day, for speaking out and literally calling Israel a wrath of terror against the Palestinian people. There was going to be consequences to that, but he didn't care enough that he stepped outside of the boundaries of what people in power are selected to do. We talk about selection. The Pope is the most obvious selected leader we have in the planet. But we know whether it's a president, whether whoever, we go through these elections, they're all selections. So people in power are put in that position. They have to follow a certain rule book. And every once in a while, it's very rare, but in this case, Pope Francis stepped outside of that rule book and did the thing he knew he needed to do and did not care about the consequences. We don't see that in other places. We don't see, and I'm not like saying, obviously, we know the Catholic Church is corrupt. We know all their problems. There's nothing about it that we could say is, on the up and up, and not too many areas at all. We know that Pope Francis did not stand up when it came to COVID policies, and he pushed mandates through the Catholic Church. We saw that, and the outcomes of that was devastating, and he never apologized for that. So there's a whole thing on that we covered on our show. But I just think it's important that we juxtapose these situations where people in power, you can do the right thing. Pope Francis standing up for the Palestinian people is the right thing. So it does give us at least a little hope that every once in a while that somebody in power can do the right thing. But ultimately, we got to be okay with the fact that they won't, because that's usually the paper trail and that's the blueprint we see time and time again, is that people in power just basically do the thing that they were selected to do, and that's to keep the people down and keep the people in power going strong with no consequences.
Yeah, you're right. It's rare, unfortunately, but it is extremely rare, and it's just so sad that this is where we're going. What a sad timeline we live in, where you have like so many great leaders die in the last couple years, where you have this just like decline of humanity. Because if anything shows the decline of humanity is the fact that there's still a genocide going. We showed in the last show the pictures of the Rafah border, where Palestinians were supposed to go for refuge. It's completely and totally destroyed, decimated rubble. There's nothing left. And we have, we're showing these images where some people are like, okay, yeah, we're done with Gaza. That's a done. They want to tune out of it. They don't even want to talk about it anymore, because it's been happening for so long that we're just like, yeah, what's happening over there is so bad. So how's your weekend? Like but this is like, especially in the US, I feel like that's the conversations I think that are happening. And it's really sad if even the conversation if it even is brought up at this point.
I think people have been scared. People have been scared into being silent. And I'm not I'm not trying to make excuses for them, because obviously we know being silent is just like supporting the thing, like, because you're saying by being silent, you're not any better than the people pushing the genocide, because you're not doing anything to stop it. You're saying it's okay. But like, I do think that there's a lot of intimidation. There's a lot of people are seeing the pushback you get for getting in the streets, and you're being called these horrible things. You're being called anti-Semitic. You're being called psychotic. Now they're calling people psychotic. Like, this is a Jordan Peterson talking point we're seeing. You're psychotic if you go in the street. You hate Jews. You're a psychopath. You're just an idiot altogether. That's like the best. That's the best description they give you, is an idiot. And then they make up the stuff about everybody's paid to be in. So there's all these different tactics to destroy the voice of the people. And like you said, Felix, the fact that people don't want just do the right thing and say, this is wrong, rather than, hey, what are you having for lunch today? But I think more people got to get angry about this now, because it's not going to stop until they're down to the to borrow a phrase from our friend Lindsey Graham from the Ukraine situation, down to the last Palestinian. It seems like that's where they're going, and there's not going to be anyone left to tell the tale. So we have to be louder than ever now, and not fall for the obvious. It's not even just gaslighting. It's shaming people. It's bullying. It's it's literally imprisoning people for doing the right thing. So people got to get over that fear and get in the streets more than ever now.
Well, and speaking of getting in the streets, that's becoming a lot harder because this administration has been persecuting people who have a different political belief. Now, before, when Biden was going after people who said something against the Russia-Ukraine war or who said something related that would have been taken as being pro-Putin, that was being censored, and the right came out in droves and said, you need to support free speech. You're infringing on our speech. But now when it's turned around and Trump's in office, many have become the hypocrites that they were raving about or raging on, because they have been supporting the censorship of the other side, of the people they call leftist or woke, who are talking about Palestine, who are talking about Gaza, who are protesting. There have been, kids kicked out of colleges, university professors fired, losing tenure. I mean, I could go on. And now, of course, we're persecuting people who are maybe have green cards or who have not necessarily citizenship in the United States over this whole thing. But you brought up something that we didn't get to talk about, Matt, and you brought up the fact that the National Institute of Health, the NIH, is trying to protect Israel under new guidelines. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was reported a few days ago, and I know Glenn Greenwald covered this, and a lot of people are reporting this, that if you go to the NIH website, I guess in the last 6 days, they have updated the conditions on which you are allowed, if you're a scientist, you're doing research of any sort, whether you're allowed to continue getting funding. You're not, what you have to check boxes to get that funding. So if you're doing cancer research, whatever you're doing, they're going to pull the plug on you if you have any sort of alignment with any sort of boycotting.
You can bring it up, Jayme, the tweet.
Yeah, go for it, Jayme. So we can see that. Yeah, this is under the new guidelines released by the NIH. And this, Glenn Greenwald put this up. Medical researchers will have all funds terminated if they support a boycott of Israel. So they can, and just to be clear, you can support a boycott of any other country or even the U.S., just not Israel. So the fact that this is now being put into, in fact, let's put up that that screenshot. Actually, I think I grabbed it here. Okay, yeah, there you go. If we can read that. So those are the highlighted parts. Yeah, so they're defining in section D, the discriminatory prohibited boycott. They're defining it, so it means refusing to deal, cutting commercial relations, or otherwise limiting commercial relations, specifically with Israel or companies doing business in or with Israel, or authorized by, licensed by, or organized under the laws of Israel to do business. So now by defining that, if you go down to the next section, it says by accepting the grant award, recipients are certifying that, and then you look at the second part that's highlighted, they do not engage in and will not, during the term of this award, engage in a discriminatory prohibited boycott, which they define above. So that means you can't support people in Palestine in any way, shape, or form. No alignment with that. So the fact that our health organizations like the NIH, and we've seen the HHS as well, we've seen RFK Jr. using the HHS, the Twitter account, the actual, the handle, not his own, the handle, saying this is the biggest health crisis. It's a health crisis, fee, that we have anti-Semitism on campuses right now. So if you understand that you were part of the MAHA movement, that's the Make America Healthy Again movement, and you knew that the Israel thing was wrong, but you still said, well, this is separate. Our health agencies are separate from this. RFK Jr., we don't care that he thinks that Palestinian people are the most pampered people on the planet. He's going to be in charge of our health agencies. The NIH, what could they possibly have to do with what we think about Israel and Palestine? Well, here you go, everyone. Here it is. There is no escape from the Israel capture of our institutions, of our government, of all these agencies that should be dealing with health and holding big pharma accountable, holding big food accountable. How are we going to be able to do those things if we have to pledge allegiance to a foreign country over our own to get anything to happen? This is a problem.
This is a huge problem. And all of the people who are, Maha, see, this is why they're doing it, because there is a sector of the right that is super anti-Zionist. And they have seen that. And they're like, okay, well, we can't allow that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue dividing them up, because initially what myself and others talked about RFK Jr. Dividing the independents, dividing them, and allowing the Zionism to come in. And so those who supported him said, all right, we'll deal with that as long as he can get this other stuff done, right? As you said. But now they're even trying to divide the MAGA people or the Maha people into the pro-Zionists, the ones that still continue to accept the control of Zionist Israel, over the ones who actually criticize it and are like, wait a minute, this is a little much. So not only have they turned the free speech, anti-censorship, pro First Amendment, MAGA people, anti-establishment populists into pro-censorship, pro-Israel. They're like trying to further divide them, because again, you easily capture people more when you can divide them. And so this is really just a testament to how powerful the Zionist lobby is in the United States, how powerful, you can get away with anything. It's not just in the United States. Let me add that. It's literally everywhere in most countries in the world. In most countries. I don't want to say all, but in most industrialized countries, especially in the West, but not necessarily only in the West, you can say whatever you want against anybody you want. But the moment you touch Israel, it becomes this whole thing where now you're in trouble by somebody or something. And we could talk about even the the outlets that are supposed to be free speech, like X, Rumble, and all these other outlets. Well, yeah, but there's not a lot of going after Israel in a lot of these, or you get censored, shadow banned, whatever. So it is a huge problem. And I think it goes beyond Israel, because clearly Israel has powers beyond the reach of its own entity, right? Its own existence of territory. And I really, the people who have been advocating for the First Amendment, who have advocating freedom and all of this, should be the ones to really call this out. They should be the ones to abandon this movement, because they look like straight up hypocrites, and they have nothing to say for when the next administration comes and uses these very mechanisms against them the next time around, because this is what always happens, right? It's that back and forth all the time.
These are the people we have to hold. Like, we have to. I don't know how we're going to get them to do this, but Fee, you're right. Like, the people that got stuff right about censorship in these last 5 years, these are the people. These are what you would call the medical freedom movement community. These are the people that ended up on the Maha train and said, "This is RFK Jr. This team, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's the guy that's supposed to be doing all these things with NIH right now." These are the people that supported this, that championed this, that were against censorship, that were about, let's have discussions. Let's look at the red flags. When we see the people getting censored, the people losing their licenses, right? Isn't that was the whole point? Doctors and scientists losing their licenses, their ability to be taken seriously in the medical arena, the medical community, because they were pushing for actual treatments that were preventative medicines for COVID, like ivermectin. Those are the people that were getting punished. These are the people that knew that at the time. They are the ones we need right now to stand up against this. I'm not saying like the Democrats are a lost cause, because I think a lot of them go, wait a minute, this is not. We're supposed to be for human rights. We're supposed to be for the Palestinian people. What's going on? But they did take they did drink the Kool-Aid when it came to, we got to stop. Words are violence. We have to be careful. We don't want to hurt each other with words. So I don't have as much hope for that group, even though I know they know they're wrong, that this is wrong. But the medical freedom movement community right now, they need to do something about this, because their entire Maha, that whole diatribe, how we're going to take on the deep state, RFK Jr. is going to come in and we're going to get mRNA out of the vaccines. We're going to look at the autism thing. We're going to get our food, get the poisons out of our food. the pharma commercials off of our TVs. So all these things they want to do, they have to look at this right now. The people getting censored, it's the same playbook of COVID. It's the exact same playbook. They don't want us to have these discussions. The people that are talking about Palestine are the ones being punished right now. Please get vocal about this. If you're part of that community that saw this go down in real time 5 years ago till now, you are the people we need right now to be vocal and say, how are you going to get anything done with Maha if you're going to pull grants from people who have something to say about children getting their limbs blown off right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's as simple as that. If we can't talk about an ongoing genocide, the genocide of children, of women, of innocent people in Gaza and beyond now, because it's expanded everywhere, then what's like, what are we standing? What's the point of health? What is health then? Like who is controlling these mechanisms? And this is what we always said on this show, Pasta and I, and I'm sure you said it as well. The military industrial complex, the same people that were behind the COVID mandates, that were behind the COVID lies and everything else, are the same people. This is what we try to get into a lot of the left that fell for it, right? They are the same people that are waging wars abroad. They are exactly the same mechanisms, and people still don't understand how these things connect, and they're entirely connected, all the way from the military's involvement in the creation of these, of what many say are biological weapons. And so when we talk about that, you have to understand there's no difference. All of these things are connected. And the fact is that not too long ago, they were using the whole vaccination of children to try to say, we will, if hopefully they can stop, Israel will stop bombing children so they get vaccinated, and then they went on and resumed the bombing. Like, it was just this weird thing that was like, wait a minute, like, this doesn't make any sense. Why? So Israel's like, yeah, we'll stop the bombing for them to get, we'll allow them to get vaccines, but they wouldn't really stop the bombing. They would allow them to get the vaccines as they were bombing them. So what is this? What are we fighting for here? Like, these are all the same people behind all of this. So I think it's worth highlighting, Matt, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually infuriating. That's crazy. And I haven't seen this being talked about actually as much as it should be talked about.
Maybe the word's just getting out now. Maybe there's a breaking point. I don't know. I thought the breaking point would be RFK Jr. saying that our biggest health crisis is anti-Semitism right now. I mean, that should have been it. But if it's not that, it has to be this. The NIH pulling funding about being aligned with Palestine. When you're talking about health, like, come on, guys, wake up. Anybody part of the medical freedom community that thought that, oh, well, I'll just, Israel, Palestine, that's not my game. You guys can handle that. I'm doing this. It's like, it's all connected, man. This is what we say, right? It's all connected, man. It is. If you're going to be an activist for one thing for the people, you got to be for all of it. If you're going to be an activist against censorship, you got to be against all of it. If you're going to be an activist against whatever it is, bodily autonomy, you got to be against all of the actions against that. You got to be against all of this. Like, it's so once we understand that we have to get out of this tribal mindset, and you're, oh, I'm only going to do the thing and the thing. No, let's expand. When we expand these principles into other areas, our movement, our populist movement, can expand as well. So we need those medical health freedom community people right now to at least get curious. Wait, who just got canceled? Wait, who just got arrested? Wait, who just lost their funding? Yes, get curious, ask questions. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Matt, for pointing that out. That's awesome that was highlighted. I honestly wasn't that well versed in that. I didn't know it was that bad. And I've only heard about RFK Jr. doing something else, like bringing other vaccines, which was actually something that hasn't been talked about. It was for, I believe, for some sort of, I think, the bird flu or something like that.
Yeah, he's pushing they're pushing the bird flu vax right now. RFK Jr. is pushing it. He's not, by the way, guys, he's not in charge any more than Trump's in charge, any more than Zelensky's in charge. Nobody's in charge of anything. They're selected They have to sign an oath of a contract. They have to do an arrangement where they're given breadcrumbs. This is how it works, everyone. You get breadcrumbs of the things you're allowed to do, and then everything else you have to concede. We can't do it. And we know firsthand because we had Steve Karsh on our show, and he told us, and not just to us, he told the whole audience of a documentary that Mickey Willis had produced and put it up here in LA. He told everyone in the room that RFK Jr., they text every day, and RFK Jr. said, we can't do anything about the mRNA. I'm sorry. We just can't. They don't want me to do anything. So we're hearing it directly from the horse's mouth. I can't do anything about it. Meanwhile, Trump does a deal with Ellison with this new AI technology with mRNA cancer finding technology. They're going to find the cancer in you and then give you some mRNA to cure you with some more gene therapy. That Trump invested in that. That's what's going on right now. So you still think that they can get away with anything? They can do anything for us. It's only going to be breadcrumbs. It's only going to be a piece of the RFK of the JFK files. It's only going to be a piece of the 9/11 files. It's only going to be a piece of, we might get one red dye 40 out of our food. Bravo. But that's it. It's a little breadcrumb, and the rest, they are beholden to the people that put them in there in the first place. That's it.
And Matt, we didn't get a chance to talk about Virginia Jeffrey who died.
Yeah.
Allegedly by suicide. I mean, she did have a lot of problems. Like, nobody's denying that she was mentally not okay based on a lot of the reports. But it's just all, Foss and I followed this case for years, for a while, and the whole thing is just really crazy. If you look into it. So hopefully we can talk about that on the next show, y'all, because I think Pasta has to be here for that one.
He'll
so we'll break that one down.
Spoiler alert, she didn't kill herself, but hey, sorry guys. But yeah, let's let's have that conversation at the right time. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Matt, let everybody know where they can find you if they don't already know, since you're pretty much like a regular guest. But yeah, what you're up to as well.
Oh yeah, no. Homeless Left. It's the Homeless Left is the show we're on primarily on Rumble. We go Tuesdays and Thursdays, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, always doing topics of military industrial complex and challenging big pharma, all that stuff. Obviously, we're anti-censorship. That's how you got to be. That's why Rumble is our channel. We try to get on YouTube too, but they terminated our first channel, the Homeless Left. That's gone. Can't find it, guys. It got terminated. We're too dangerous for the community. So we started another burner account on YouTube. If you guys can find us there, it's THL Presents. So we're still fighting them. We're not going to give up the fight by any means. So yeah, check us out Tuesdays, Thursdays. We'll be back. We took a little break. We'll be back this Thursday. So check us out on Rumble. All new show, live show this Thursday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. So yes, much appreciated, Fee, for sure.
Awesome. And thank Jayme behind the scenes. He's engineering the show, and I will be doing something this week as well on Substack. I have a few things coming up as well. I wrote an article for UK Column if you haven't read it, and I have some more coming up as well. So we will be back with Pasta for sure on Friday, but if anything comes up, I'll let you all know. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your Monday. We'll see you next time. Bye.